Hi, friends. Welcome to the Spooky Files. If you're returning, thank you so much for coming back. If you're new here, I'm glad to have you. I'm your host, Mary Ellen Quigley. This is where we dive into the paranormal, the unexplained, the I swear I saw something, but I don't want to admit it moments that we all have. And now I have a place to talk about them. Today's episode is called They Followed Me Home. In this episode, we're not talking about haunted houses, creepy places, or locations with a reputation. This is about ghosts that don't stay where they're supposed to. Haunted places are easy to avoid, but what if it's you that is the thing that's haunted? These are stories of people who went somewhere ordinary and came back with uninvited guests. So grab a blanket, settle in, and let's get into it. Our first story comes from someone who wishes to remain anonymous, and they titled their email with "Thought leaving was enough." They write, "Hi, Mary. This happened when I was a teenager, but I still think about it every time I sit in a dark room. A group of friends and I went to a late-night movie. It was the last showing and started at almost midnight. There were maybe 10 people total in the theater. I was sitting in the back row because I love being high up in the seats for the best view of the screen. About halfway through the movie, I heard someone whisper my name. Not loudly, but like they needed something really important. I looked at all my friends and the people near us to see who was calling out to me. No one was. Everyone was looking forward at the screen. I brushed it off. People whisper all the time in theaters, so I thought I was overhearing someone else. A few minutes later, I heard it again. They said my name, but this time it was coming from behind me. I turned fully around, but of course there was no one there because I was in the last row. The only thing behind me was a wall. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it and ruin the movie for my friends, so I didn't tell anyone. I just sat there and tried to ignore it. But the rest of the movie, I had this overwhelming feeling that someone was sitting just out of my line of sight, not touching me, just close to me. When the movie ended, I bolted. I didn't even wait for my friends. I just wanted to get out of there. I thought that would be the end of it. That night, I was lying in bed when I heard it again, saying my name. Same tone from somewhere in my room. I looked around, and once again, there was no one there. Whatever was at the movie theater followed me home. I slept with the lights on for weeks. I only heard the ghost one more time, and eventually whatever this was stopped. I never saw the spirit, and it never did anything but say my name. I wonder if the ghost didn't do anything else because the person was ignoring it. I've often heard paranormal experts say that acknowledging a ghost gives it power because they feed off of your fear and your energy. By staying almost nonchalant about the experience, it makes me think that this ghost just didn't get enough off of this person to make it worth staying. But if they had had a different reaction, perhaps it would have lingered a little longer. Interesting to consider. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. Let's move on to the next one. Story 2, I brought something home from the hospital. The next story comes from Carrie. She writes, "Hi, Mary. A few years ago, I worked nights as a CNA at a long-term care hospital. If you've ever worked overnight in healthcare, you know how strange that world is. I loved my job, I really did, but death was part of the routine. You learn how to compartmentalize because if you don't, you wouldn't survive very long in that environment. There was one patient I took care of for months. She didn't have much family, so staff became her people. She was quiet, gentle, and kind. She always hummed songs under her breath while I helped her get ready for bed or adjusted her blankets. I never thought much of it at the time. It was just one of her habits. The night she passed, it was peaceful. No drama, no panic. I sat with her for a while after, straightening the room the way we're trained to do. I remember thinking how quiet it felt without the humming. After that, things started happening. On my drive home after work, I'd hear humming in my car. Very faint, easy to explain away. I told myself it was something I was picking up on the radio, like a crossed signal or something. At home, I'd catch the smell of perfume, a soft floral scent that would disappear as quickly as it came. Then there was the feeling. Every night when I washed my hands at the sink, I felt like someone was standing behind me, not touching me, just near. Close enough that I'd catch myself glancing at my reflection, expecting to see someone else in the mirror with me. I didn't talk about it. Healthcare workers don't like to admit things like that. You're tired, you're grieving, you're very burned out. There's always a logical explanation. Until the night, there wasn't. I was home alone, standing in my hallway, getting ready to grab my purse and keys, when I heard a voice say my name. I recognized her immediately. It was the woman who just passed. I didn't scream or run. I didn't actually feel scared at all. I just felt sad. And that's when it hit me. I had never told her goodbye. I had cared for her body. I had followed protocol, but I never acknowledged her as a person leaving. So I said it out loud. I told her goodbye. I said, "You can't stay with me. It's okay to go." After that, everything stopped. No more humming, no more perfume, no more feeling of someone standing just behind me. I still work in healthcare. I still work nights. But now, whenever a patient passes, whether I knew them well or not, I always say goodbye out loud before I leave the room. Not because I'm afraid, but because I want them to know that I acknowledge their passing and that it's okay to move on. Healthcare workers see more death than people realize. It's definitely one of the toughest jobs out there. And I think that sometimes spirits don't understand the boundaries like we expect them to, especially when someone cared for them in life. My mother was in a nursing home at the end of her life, and I can tell you from experience that nurses often become like friends or family because of how much time they spend with your loved one when you're not there. They become an extension of the family. And it makes me really sad to think that this woman didn't feel like she could move on. I'm glad Carrie was able to finally help her find some peace. And story 3, the funeral. Our final story comes from someone who also wishes to remain anonymous. And they write, "After my grandfather's funeral, I stayed behind at the church to help clean up. Most people had already left. We were loading flowers out to the car, helping to stack chairs, and getting the church ready for weekend services. I was alone in the sanctuary gathering programs and making sure nothing was left on the pews. I remembered thinking how strange it felt to be in that space without people because it had a creepy vibe. That's when I felt something brush past me. It wasn't the feeling of air or fabric, but pressure, like someone passing close enough that you instinctively step aside, except there was no one there. I froze for a moment and told myself it was just exhaustion. Grief does weird things to your body. No one in the family had been sleeping well since Grandpa's passing. I finished cleaning and left without thinking much more about it. That night, I woke up to the sound of my bedroom door opening. I looked up expecting it to be my mother or little sister. I lay there staring at it, waiting for someone to step through. No one did. The next morning, I noticed something really strange. Every framed photo in my house that included my grandfather had been turned face down, not knocked over, placed gently face down one by one. Photos of our other family members were untouched. My mother asked me if I had done it. I told her I hadn't. My sister said she didn't do it either. Then I started to feel watched. Nothing scary, but like someone was following me around throughout the day and just observing what I was up to. The activity continued for days. Almost immediately, my mother mentioned that she thought it was my grandfather. She was also experiencing strange things. It made sense with him recently passing. I caught myself talking out loud to him, explaining things, apologizing for crying, having full conversations like it was normal to be talking to a ghost. But it made me sad. I didn't want my grandpa stuck here on earth. I wanted him to go to heaven or wherever we go when this life is over. Finally, one night, I called out to him. I thanked him. I told him I loved him. I told him we would be okay. And I said, "It's okay for you to go." The house was quiet after that. We haven't had any paranormal activity since. I still miss my grandfather every day, but I hope we will see each other again when this life is over. This story breaks my heart because I can imagine feeling torn about wanting your loved ones to stay with you, but also loving them enough to know that moving on is what's best for them. I definitely think this was probably the grandfather, and that the grandfather felt like he couldn't move on until he knew everyone would be okay without him. So I'm so glad this person was able to confirm that for him. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And that brings us to the end of episode 8 of the Spooky Files. They followed me home. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend, follow me on social media, leave me a comment because I love hearing from all of you. And I am looking for more stories to share on the podcast. So if you have a story you would like me to share, please send an email to the spookyfilespodcast@gmail.com or send me a message on social media. Or perhaps you've already shared your experience through a TikTok or some kind of online social media post. If that's the case, you can also tag me in that or send me the link, and I would be happy to check it out that way if it's a little bit less pressure for you to send it to me in that format. Remember that I read every single email or message, and it helps build a community of people that don't just love the spooky stories, but are looking for a safe place to talk about the things we don't always like to admit out loud. Make sure to follow or subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. If you're looking for more paranormal content, check out my other podcast, Hoosier Myths and Legends, where my sister and I talk about all things spooky from the state of Indiana. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and keep it spooky, my friends.